You won't believe what happened next. ... But first, we must remember how we arrived at the gates of the sleeping castle. We followed the Jupiter brothers, double Ludwig and the patient Johannes. They left their father's leather workshop to chase a legend. They journeyed through an ancient wood that seemed to watch their every move. Along the way, we saw the true nature of both men revealed. Ludwig, driven by a hurried ambition, carelessly disrupted an anthill and mocked the creatures of the forest. Johann, however, chose the path of somatic stillness, pausing to rebuild what was broken and offering kindness to the ducks and the bees they encountered. When they finally reached the gray, silent walls of the castle, they were met by a mysterious old woman who issued a warning. Failed the trials, and you will be claimed by the enchantment. Ludwig, ever confident, took on the first task, gathering 1,000 scattered seeds from an overgrown garden before nightfall. But as the shadows lengthened, his frantic energy failed him. He was found by the very sleep he tried to outrun, becoming another silent statue in the castle's halls. Now, Johann stands alone. The fire in the great hall has gone cold, and the old woman's gaze is fixed upon him. The first trial has claimed his brother, and now it is Johann's turn to face the architecture of the garden. "I'll attempt the task," he said. The old woman did not tell him whether she thought this was wise. She simply turned and walked toward the kitchen, and Johann followed. The garden looked exactly as Ludwig had left it, chaotic, overgrown, and impossible. The old woman gave Johann the same instructions she had given his brother: 1,000 seeds. By nightfall, not a single one missing. Then say left. Johann stood at the edge of the garden and surveyed it. He felt the first cool stirrings of despair. The space was vast and tangled beyond description. You could spend a week in here with a magnifying glass and still not find everything. He did not have a week. He had a day. He started anyway. He could not simply give up without trying. He pulled aside vines and sifted carefully through the disturbed earth, finding seeds here and there, dropping them carefully into his pocket. But after an hour, he stopped. He sat down on the kitchen step and put his face in his hands. The sun was barely a quarter of the way across the sky. He had found perhaps 30 seeds. He sat there for a long time, in the quiet of the garden. Around him the morning sounds came and went. A bird somewhere distant, the wind in the overgrown hedges, the soft, almost imperceptible stirring of 10,000 living things going about their lives. And then he saw something moving at the edge of his vision. He lifted his face from his hands. There was an ant on the step beside him. Then another, then several. And as he watched, a line of ants was forming, emerging from the edge of the garden and making its purposeful way across the stone step toward a growing pile beside his knee. Each ant was carrying something tiny and precise, and exactly seed-shaped. Johann's breath caught. He watched, very still, as more and more ants appeared. From all across the garden they came, from every corner of the overgrown beds, from under roots and stones, and the rotting remains of old frames and trellises. They moved with extraordinary purpose and speed, and every single one deposited its cargo in the growing pile beside him. The pile grew, and grew, and grew. The sun moved across the sky. Johann sat on the step and watched, and felt a gratitude so profound he could not find words for it, and did not try. By the time twilight was beginning to soften the edges of the garden, the pile of seeds beside him was immense, and as the old woman appeared in the doorway behind him, Johann counted carefully, with trembling hands, exactly 1,000 seeds. He had passed the first test. That night he ate at the magical table with a heart full of relief, and a mind already turning quietly over the question of what the second test would bring. The fire crackled. The feast appeared and disappeared. He slept in his chair. In the morning, the old woman led him not back to the kitchen garden, but out and around the side of the castle, along a weed-choked path that wound through an overgrown pleasure garden full of roses gone wild and hedges forgotten by any pruning hand. At the end of the path, the landscape opened up, and Johann found himself looking at a lake. It must have been beautiful once. You could still see the bones of it, the elegant benches with their trellises now consumed by climbing plants, the fountain at the center, now silent and green with moss, the lily pads that had once been a tasteful accent to the water's surface, now covering most of it entirely. Somewhere beneath all that algae and soft green growth, the lake held its secrets in the cool and quiet dark. Somewhere at the bottom of this lake, the old woman said, there is a key. It will open the door to the chamber where the princess sleeps. You have until nightfall, and then, as before, she turned and walked back to the castle. Johann looked at the lake for a long time. He thought about diving in. He waded in, actually up to his knees in the silty, murky water, his boots immediately filling with cold mud, before he realized it was hopeless. He could not see even a foot beneath the surface. He could not search a lake he could not see through. He pulled himself back to the bank and sat on a bench, his boots squelching, and stared at the lily pads. After a while he heard the sound of wings. A small group of ducks appeared over the tree line, circling once, twice, and then descending to the lake with the unhurried grace that ducks have when they've decided somewhere is safe enough. They touched down among the lily pads and began to move through the water, dunking their heads, paddling quietly, working their way around the edges of the lake with a systematic thoroughness that looked almost, if you were paying attention, intentional. Johann watched them. They moved in a slow, patient circuit of the entire lake. They dived and surfaced. They worked their way from the shallows to the deeper center and back again. Hours passed. The sun moved. Johann sat on his bench and ate nothing and drank nothing and just watched, hoping. And then, as the afternoon light turned long and golden and the shadows began to stretch across the water, one of the ducks waddled up onto the bank. It walked directly to where Johann sat. In its bill was a golden key. Johann took it with shaking hands. His eyes were bright. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you." The duck regarded him for a moment with the calm, ancient dignity that ducks have always possessed, then turned and waddled back to the water. As if on a signal, the rest of the flock took to the air, rising together in a flurry of wings, climbing into the evening sky, and flying away toward the sunset until they were nothing but small shapes against the fading light. They had repaid his kindness by the lake all those evenings ago. Bread for a key, patience for patience. Johann held the golden key in his palm and allowed himself, quietly, to cry a little. He passed the second test. The next morning, the old woman met him and led him not out into the castle grounds, but up the wide, curving staircase, and along corridor after corridor, up through the highest reaches of the castle, where the floors were thick with dust undisturbed for decades, and the windows were gray with grime. Their echoing footsteps were the only sound in all that silence. At the end of the highest corridor, there was a door. It was covered in cobwebs so dense they looked almost like curtains. The old woman produced the golden key, turned it in the lock, and the door groaned open as though waking from a dream. Johann stepped in. The room was large and light, or it would have been light if the windows had been clean. As it was, weak bars of dusty sunlight struggled through the glass and fell across the floor in pale stripes. In the center of the room stood an enormous canopied bed, draped in faded velvet, hung with curtains that might once have been deep crimson and were now a dusty, faded rose. And in the bed, lying so perfectly still they might have been figures carved from marble, were 3 young women. They were identically dressed in white nightgowns. Their hair was spread across the pillows around them. Their faces were composed and peaceful, and utterly without expression. They were asleep. All 3 of them, the enchantment moved over them like water, still, complete, as deep as the years that had passed over them. "One of these maidens is the princess," the old woman said. Beside him, the other 2 are her ladies in. On the night the enchantment fell, they each ate a sweet after supper. The ladies in waiting chose sugar candies. The princess ate a honey cake. She turned to look at Johann directly. "To break the spell, you must wake the true princess with a kiss. If you choose wrongly, everything is lost. You will join your brother and all the others in sleep." And then she left. Johann stood alone in the dusty light and looked at the 3 sleeping maidens. They were identical in their stillness. There was nothing to distinguish one from another. No difference in dress, no markings, nothing to indicate which was noble and which was not. He could not tell simply by looking. Emig days, but guessing with these stakes was not a strategy he was willing to trust. He stood and he thought, and he thought, and the dust drifted in the sunbeams, and the castle held its breath around him. And then he heard a sound near his ear, a small, familiar sound. He turned his head. A honeybee was hovering at his shoulder, not an ordinary bee. Even as he turned to look at her, he could see that she was somehow different, larger, marked differently. She moved through the still air of the room with a deliberate quality. That was nothing like the random searching of a bee in a garden. She drifted toward the bed. Johann watched without moving or speaking as she moved slowly along the length of the 3 sleeping maidens. She hovered briefly over the girl on the right, then over the girl in the middle. Then she paused and returned and hovered again over the girl on the right, and then continued to the girl at the far left. And then she stopped, and slowly, deliberately, she circled the maiden at the far left of the bed. Once, twice, 3 times. Then she came to rest for just a moment, not on her, but above her. And then she rose and flew a slow, final circle of the room, and flew out through the window. Johann looked at the maiden on the far left. She was sleeping as deeply as the others. Her face was as still, But she was the one who had chosen honey, and she was the one he needed to wake. He crossed the room. He stood beside the bed. He leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the light in the room changed. The dusty half-light through the grimy windows brightened, somehow, as though the sun outside had just emerged from behind a cloud. And then birdsong reel. Living birdsong, not the memory of it, but the actual thing, began to drift through the glass. The maiden on the far left moved. Slowly. Her eyelids fluttered. Her face shifted from its perfect stillness into something altogether more human, more alive, more present. And then her eyes opened, and she looked up at Johann. A small, confused frown crossed her face. "Goodness," she said, in a voice slightly rusty from a very long sleep. "I've had the strangest dream. The castle woke that day. All of it. It happened slowly, not all at once, but in waves, spreading outward from that chamber at the top of the tower. First, the ladies in waiting stirred, then the servants in the floors below, then the courtiers in their chambers, then the guards in the corridors, then the cooks in the kitchen, then the stable hands in the yard. Everyone woke into the same woolly, bewildered state, unsure of how much time had passed or quite what had happened to them. The failed suitors were a special case. Each of them surfaced from their enchanted sleep with the vivid and not particularly flattering memory of having failed the very first test, which mostly involved the discovery of seeds. They were, to put it generously, embarrassed about this. Several of them left the castle quite quickly, which was probably the dignified thing to do. Ludwig woke up. He blinked at the ceiling of the castle hallway, found himself on a bench with a very stiff neck and an entire kingdom-s worth of humility. Suddenly, making its presence felt, and spent a considerable amount of time sitting very quietly and thinking. By evening, the whole castle had been shaken out and dusted off, the cobwebs cleared, the fires lit, the windows thrown open to let in the first clean air the place had enjoyed in years. The magical table, freed from its enchanted purpose, produced one final feast, vast, extravagant, joyful, and every soul in the castle sat down to it together. The king was reunited with his daughter, the courtiers were reunited with one another, and Johann, quiet, patient, soft-hearted Johann, who had fed the ducks his bread and left the bees their honey and rebuilt a broken anthill with careful hands, stood at the center of it all, slightly pink in the face and not entirely sure what to do with himself, which the princess found tremendously endearing. They talked for a long time that first evening. It turned out that she was very fond of honey cake. He was also rather fond of cake in general. This seemed against the vastness of what had just happened, like a very small and ordinary thing to have in common. And it was, in the best possible way, exactly right. Ludwig stayed for the wedding. He had arrived as a boy with an enormous ego and a somewhat flexible relationship with other people's dignity, and he left as something considerably better. A man who had looked at his own limits honestly and found the experience, while thoroughly unpleasant, genuinely useful. It turned out that one of the ladies in waiting had found something rather appealing about the big, sheepish, changed young man, and the two of them were eventually betrothed. Their father was sent for. He came, teary-eyed and disbelieving and utterly overjoyed, and took up comfortable residence in the castle, which was exactly the sort of retirement a good leather worker deserved. And from then on, if you ever wandered through the castle grounds, you would find certain small but telling signs of the people who lived there. Breadcrumbs scattered near the lake, where a family of ducks had taken up permanent residence. The beehives in the kitchen garden, tended with care and left perfectly alone. And the path between the formal gardens, where people always moved a little to one side if an ant hill happened to be in the way. Johann had not forgotten. He never did. That is how it is with kindness. The small things you do quietly when no one is watching, when there is nothing in it for you, those are the things that remember you. Those are the things that come back when you need them most to save everything. And he and the princess lived happily ever after. Of course they did. Take a breath now. A slow, easy breath. Feel the story settling around you like something warm and soft. There is nothing to do now but rest. Nothing to solve. Nothing to figure out. The next story is already waiting for you, just ahead in the dark. And it is unlike anything we have visited yet, because this one does not take place in any world you have walked through before. This one takes place in the world you travel to every single night without ever quite meaning to. The world that exists only in the space between sleeping and waking. The world that is real in the way that dreams are real, more vivid than ordinary life, more luminous, more strange. Let yourself drift a little now. Let your body sink. Let your mind soften. Because it is time for the dream world. The magical dream world, Tilda. There is a place that exists beyond the edge of ordinary life. You will not find it on any map. You cannot travel there by road or by train or by any vehicle that runs on fuel and follows a timetable. It has no address. It cannot be photographed or measured or explained to anyone's complete satisfaction. And yet, you have been there. Every single night of your life, you have been there. You just have not always remembered. It is called the dream world, and tonight, we are going to visit it together. This place, this soft, impossible, shimmering place, exists just beyond the edge of sleep. It is where your imagination goes when you stop watching it, where color is more saturated, where sound carries farther, where everything that does not exist in the waking world comes quietly to life and behaves as though it always belonged. The laws that govern the ordinary day have no purchase here. Gravity is merely a suggestion. Time is something that happens to other people elsewhere. Nothing is impossible, and the sky there is more than one sky, holds wonders that have no names. All that is needed to get there is this. Close your eyes, breathe, and let go. You find yourself first. You find yourself first on a path. It is a dirt path, warm and gentle underfoot, winding forward through an expanse of emerald grass so vivid it seems almost to glow. Every blade is decorated at its tip with a tiny pearl of dew, catching the light of the morning sun and holding it, spinning it into something small and perfect. A white wooden fence runs along the path's edge, clean and unhurried, guiding you forward without urgency. Your footsteps make a soft, satisfying sound against the earth. The ground is slightly crumbly underfoot, the kind that gives just enough to make walking feel pleasant, like the ground itself is welcoming you. You breathe in. The air is extraordinary. There is orange blossom in it, light and sweet, the kind that makes you think of warm courtyards and summer evenings. And underneath that, something richer, ripe peaches, warm from the sun. The scent of them so complete, you can almost taste the juice. You close your eyes for a moment and just breathe. And then you open them and look ahead, and the landscape is taking shape around you. Trees, so many trees, tall ones and broad ones, slender ones, with delicate branches like reaching fingers, ancient gnarled ones whose trunks are wider than a room. Their bark comes in colors you have never encountered on trees in the waking world. Deep brown, yes, but also white as chalk. And then there, a soft, impossible lilac and a warm, dusty rose. Their branches are hung with leaves in every shade of green and gold, and between the leaves, clusters of fruit hang heavy and glowing, orange, yellow, amber, catching the light and throwing it back like lanterns. The breeze is gentle. It stirs the leaves into a whisper, moves through the grass, carries all those extraordinary scents gently past your face. Ahead of you, the sun is resting just on the horizon, still close enough to feel personal. Its warmth reaches your cheeks, your forehead, the backs of your hands. You stop walking for just a moment, close your eyes again, and simply feel it. That pure, uncomplicated warmth, like being known. When you open your eyes, there is a dog. She is small and white and fluffy, standing in the middle of the path and looking up at you with a gaze of intelligent, benevolent curiosity. She wags her tail once, twice, and then tilts her head to one side, ears perking, as if she is listening to something in the distance. You reach out and scratch the top of her head. Her fur is impossibly soft. She lets out a single soft bark, and then turns her head to look down the path. Ahead of you, a clear invitation, if ever there was one. You thank her, and she seems to understand. She spins once in a happy circle and then trots off into the grass to join the other creatures of this place. You walk on, and then you look up, and you see them. Dragons. Silver and gold birds that catch the light as they turn. White unicorns moving through a meadow at the edge of the tree line. Their manes lifting in the breeze, and winged horses, enormous, beautiful, their wings spanning the sky in great white arcs as they pass overhead. All of it so easy and so natural here, as though these creatures belong to the landscape the way trees belong to a forest. And then you notice there are two suns, two of them, one lower now, moving toward the horizon to rest, and another, brighter, younger, climbing to take its place. The light from both together falls across the world in a way that has no equivalent in the waking day. Everything bathed in a golden warmth that makes the grass shimmer, the trees glow. The creatures below catch fire with their own reflected light. You stand and turn slowly in the middle of the path, your arms out at your sides, and let it all reach you. The kangaroos in the field, the fairy creatures with their glittering wings threading through the warm air above, the horses tossing back their heads in the fields, their manes streaming, the colors, all the colors, more than you have names for, arranged by a hand more generous than any you have known. You breathe in the jasmine, the lavender, something else, Underneath, a flower with no name. It scents something between honey and rain, and old libraries and warmth. You could stay here. That is what this place feels like somewhere you could stay. You continue along the path. The trees grow more varied as you walk. Curtains of teal and pale pink leaves hang from their branches, drifting lazily downward in slow spirals. One lands on your sleeve, and you lift it to look at it. It shimmers. It shimmers, not with reflected light, but with something that comes from inside it. A soft luminescence that shifts between colors as you turn it in your fingers. Teal into pink, pink into something almost gold, gold into a shade that has no name. You smile at it and let it go. It drifts down to join its companions on the path, where the ground is carpeted with fallen color. You walk on through archways of blossom and past groves, where the trunks of the trees are twisted into shapes like figures, frozen mid. The air around them smells of something very old and very good. There is a brook nearby, you can hear it, but you cannot quite see it through the trees. A soft, constant chuckling over smooth stones. Eventually the path forks ahead to the left. More meadows, more open sky, more of the gold and green landscape you have been walking through. To the right, a dark green forest, its trees tall and closely set, the light between them filtered into long shafts of shadow and deep, mysterious shade. You look at the forest. The sky beyond it is beginning to shift. Evening is arriving in this dream world, even as you are sure it must still be morning somewhere else in this wide, unhurried land. Above the highest trees, planets are appearing, not faint and distant as they are in the waking world's night sky, but close and vivid and enormous, their colors visible, amber, blue, a deep rust red, doing their quiet, celestial dance among the stars that are already emerging between them. You choose the forest. You step off the path and into the trees, and the air changes immediately. Cooler, greener, scented now with pine and damp earth and something ancient and rooted. The light here comes from everywhere and nowhere. The stars above are thicker than you have ever seen them, and their light finds its way through the canopy in shifting, liquid patterns across the ground. The ground itself is glowing. Rocks and twigs and fallen leaves, all of them carry their own faint inner light, as though the forest after dark has a different relationship with the moon than the world above does. The light they give off is cool and silver blue and entirely beautiful. The moon is rising above the canopy, enormous and pearly white. It sends its light down through the branches in wide, trembling shafts. The undersides of the leaves shine like crystal where the moonbeams find them. The ground below is scattered with light, bright pools and scattered dots of silver, shifting as the branches move. You walk, and your footsteps are soft on the moss. From somewhere above you, an owl sends its question into the night. A frog answers from the direction of water. The forest breathes around you, alive in all its quiet, nocturnal purpose. And then you notice you are glowing. Your hands, your arms, the whole surface of you, faint but unmistakable, that same cool, silver blue inner light that the rocks and the leaves carry. You flex your fingers and watch the light move across them, shift and shimmer. You are part of this place. It has claimed you. Ahead through the trees, mountains have appeared. They simply rose there, silently and magnificently, while you were walking. They tower on either side of the forest's edge, great silver shapes reflecting the moonlight from their highest faces, throwing enormous shadows that cross the ground like slow-moving wings. The path grows even more luminous. Each step ahead is lit from below, the earth itself guiding you forward. You follow it with a quiet happiness, not thinking about where it leads, content simply to walk and breathe and be here. A turn in the path reveals fireflies, hundreds of them, thousands. They filled the air between the trees on all sides, winking in and out of existence like tiny fallen stars. The whole world around you flickers and sparks. You lift your hands and watch the lights move around your glowing fingers. Your heart is full of something that does not have a name, something that sits between wonder and belonging, and deep, unhurried peace. And then you hear water, close, rushing, but gently, not wild, not alarming, but with that full musical quality that moving water has when it has been falling over the same stones for a very long time. You follow the sound, and then you step around the edge of a boulder and you see it. A waterfall, not enormous, but luminous, as everything here is luminous. The water falls in long, smooth sheets that catch the moonlight and turn it to liquid silver. At Devase, a dark pool receives each falling thread of water with a sound like quiet applause. The mist rising from it catches the light and creates a constant, soft rainbow in the air. Faint and perfect and entirely real. You stand in front of it for a long time. There is nothing you need to do with this, nothing you need to say about it, or think about it, or remember for later. It is just beautiful, and you are here, and that is enough. Happy and full of light, you turn. You hold out your arms to the forest around you and close your eyes, and you can feel this place against your skin. The cool, the light touch of the mist, the soft brush of the fireflies, the deep, patient presence of the trees. And you are so entirely at peace that your body begins, very gently, to remember that it is tired. A good tired, a warm, earned, satisfied tired. When you open your eyes, there is a bed. Of course there is. This is the dream world, and it knows what you need. It is here, in a small clearing between the luminous trees, a wonderful, inviting, completely inexplicable bed, with a pillow so deep and soft you can already feel it before you reach it, and blankets that fold around you like a conversation between old friends. You climb in. The mattress receives you perfectly. The pillow has been waiting for precisely the shape of your head. The blankets are the exact right weight. Around you, the waterfall continues its soft music. The fireflies drift. The owl asks its question, and the forest answers. The moon moves slowly above the canopy, casting its generous light across everything that is sleeping, and everything that is not yet sleeping, everything that is glowing, everything that is still and beautiful and at rest. Your eyes grow heavy. You let them close. You think of the unicorns in the meadow and the two suns and the leaves that shimmer between colors, and the little white dog who wagged her tail and showed you the way. And then you are not thinking anything at all. You are sleeping in the dream world as deeply and peacefully as anyone has ever slept. Anywhere. ... Breathe. Just breathe. There is nothing you need to do now. You are warm and safe and held in the quiet of the night. If sleep wants you, let it have you. There are more stories ahead when you are ready, or perhaps in the morning, which is equally fine. The next story takes us into a palace, and to a family of princes, and to a girl named Me, who will discover that silence can be the bravest thing in the world. But for now, for this moment, there is only the quiet, the dark, the soft, steady rhythm of your own breathing. Rest now. Just rest. Tilda. Enchantment of the Swans. Tilda. Once there was a king and queen who had 7 children. 6 of them were sons, tall, handsome, adventurous boys who had inherited their father's laugh and their mother's stubbornness in more or less equal measure. The 7th was a daughter, and she was the youngest. Her name was May. She was, by all accounts, a remarkable child. Not in the way that people tend to say such things about the children of royalty, because it is expected and because it is politically wise, but genuinely, truly. The people who knew her said it among themselves when no one official was listening, which is the only version of a compliment that really counts. She was kind. She was patient. She had a warmth about her that made rooms feel lighter simply by her being in them. And she had a way of making even the most ordinary afternoon feel like something worth paying attention to. As the final seat clicked into place within the old woman's wooden bowl, a low, tectonic rumble echoed through the stone floors of the castle. Johann didn't celebrate. He simply stood, his hands calloused from the earth, but his heart remarkably light. He had done what the bold and the hurried Kanati had listened to the garden until it gave up its secrets. But the old woman's face remained a mask of ancient stone. She didn't offer a smile, only a lantern and a heavy iron key. "You have mastered the earth," she whispered, her voice like dry leaves skittering across a courtyard. "Now, you must face the silence of the high tower. The final trial is not one of strength, nor of sight. It is a trial of the soul itself." Johann turns toward the winding staircase, the lantern light flickering against the sleeping statues of those who came before. The crown of the castle is within reach, but the greatest shadow is yet to fall. The story reaches its peak in our final chapter. The journey continues soon. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your night. May you find deep peace and restful sleep. Wishing you the sweetest dreams. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.